Hello there, welcome to another episode of Modular Synthesis for the Film Composer. We are in part 6, can you believe it? Thank you again to Film Scoring Tips for allowing me to do this on their platform. Film Scoring Tips is the go-to place for anyone who's interested in film scoring. You'll find tips, advice from top industry professionals and much more at filmscoringtips.com. By now we should have a general grasp of what modular synthesizers can allow you to do. It's time to get into the basics, into the building blocks of modular synthesis. And we're gonna talk about envelopes and LFOs. Before we get started, I would really love if you could subscribe to the channel. It really helps me a lot and you'll be notified every time I release a new video. Ring that bell. Thank you. Let's start talking about envelopes and envelope generators, which really are your main weapon when it comes to shaping the sound of your synth. You might already be familiar with envelopes if you know anything about synthesis at all. And even in semi-modular synths, here I have my Moog Mavis, for example, which I just got and it's very nice, as a full envelope generator with attack, decay, sustain and release. They come in all shapes and forms. Some of them have only attack and release or attack and decay. Others have a full ADSR envelope, and others, like the Chaos Devices Zadar, has a whole lot of things that you can do where you can really shape custom envelopes that go up to 3 minutes long or something ridiculous like that for really slowly evolving modulations. Today we're going to use a very simple and inexpensive, which I like, envelope generator, which is the Dreadbox Ataxia from their Chromatic series of models, which is really affordable. They were also using their Hysteria Performance VCO as a main oscillator for this patch. And the Ataxia can be either 2 ADSR or 2 LFOs, so it comes really handy for what we're about to do now. Before we play any music at all, let me explain you the basics of an ADSR. I have over here my Mordax data, which I can set to be an oscilloscope. By the way, can we have a comment on how cute and compact this looks? I'm really happy about it. We have a full synth voice in here, and I'm going to use it just to show you what's going on. So I have a tiny sequencer, Maleko Variegate 4+, the Ataxia, which I just mentioned. It can be either 2 ADSRs or 2 LFOs. Hysteria, which is our oscillator. I have a tiny mixer, which I'm going to use to create complex modulation sources just from the 2 channels of Ataxia and Variegate. Then I have 2 channels of VCA, which is my voltage control amplifier, which you should know about from our previous video. My favorite filter of all times, the WMD Carbon. And then, as I said, the Mordax data. And then I have my Epinerding FX8 just for some reverb and interesting effects. So this is a full synthesizer in only 60 HP with all rather affordable modules actually, and you can actually get rid of this data which you wouldn't need and fill it up with some more stuff. So this is actually quite a nice system to get started with. To show you what the Ataxia does, I'm going to use my Variegate as a sequencer, and I'm going to go on channel 1. I'm going to set it to 4 gates, so each channels are sending gates. And I'm gonna select the probability of each step of these 8 steps being triggered. So it's essentially only triggering the first one. There you go. And I'm gonna send this to the first trigger input of Ataxia. So basically now, every time that it reaches the first step, it's gonna trigger this envelope generator. I'm gonna set these to ADSR, which is mod, and on channel 1, which is this one. So I'm gonna get the out of my Ataxia into my Mordax data. There you go, you see these envelopes being triggered, and here I can fully shape my envelope. So this is something rather snappy, for example, but I can also increase the attack very much and get like sort of a slow sound. Let's put all this knowledge to good use. I'm going to show you what I get if I just patch the output of my Hysteria VCO, which by the way is in quantized mode, which is a very nice feature, which basically allows you to, rather than scanning the frequency as a continuum, to get only discreetly the pitches of Western harmony that you need, which you might or might not want, of course, but it's a nice option to have. And if I patch it right into my input of the FX8, which I'm just using as an output module at the moment, is 100% dry. I just got some reverb loaded in at the moment. I just get a continuous sound, which I can change the pitch of. So here this goes through all the octaves available, and here the same with the. So let's select the C as a root note. Let's say in this octave, for example. We got some reverb. Very nice, but not very controllable. So let's fix that by modulating the loudness of the hysteria with my envelope generator. So to do this, I'm going to go from my VCO output into my VCA, and then the VCA is gonna go into my output module. And now I already can modulate the sound with this knob. But now the idea is that I'm going to use this ADSR to modulate this knob. So let's get the output of the Ataxia ADSR that goes into the data. And I'm going to go from the output into this CV in and turn the knob back in. So now every time that the variegate is sending a gate to the ADSR trigger, this ADSR envelope is going to be triggered. And I can get something very snappy and short, or something very sustained. It's basically like a gate, lasts very long, or something with a long attack, which I use for creating pads and things like that. Let's bring some reverb in. Nice. Let's involve some pitch so that we can create a little melody. To do this, I'm going to set my variegate 4+ to be 2 channels of gate and 2 channel of CV. In this setting, channel 1 and 3 send pitch CV, and channel 2 and 4 work as gates. So if I want to trigger my envelope, I'm going to use channel 2, and now if I select channel 2, I get the probability of each step to be triggered. Let's do something like this. So this is basically going to trigger 100% of the times on the first and the fifth step. And maybe I can fill some in the middle with a mid probability. So sometimes it triggers them and sometimes it doesn't. And now if I go on the first channel, this is CV. And you'll see that here it goes to note. And if I go on track and select the scale, I can actually quantize the pitch to different scales. So how about we choose the Dorian scale? And now I can send my CV out to my 1 volt per octave input of hysteria. This doesn't sound like Dorian to me. Sounds minor. Let's go to note, and we can do something like. Let's get something very short. This is a very long reverb. Yeah, this should be Dorian. Let's click on quantize again. It wasn't on quantize. Let's increase the attack. Let's change the shape of the waveform. It sounds nice. Found a melody that I like. incredible what a tiny system can do. Now let's try to put this lovely filter to good use. So I'm gonna go from my VCA out into my filter. And by the way, there are pros and cons in putting your filter before or after your VCA. If you think about it, it just changes considerably, and it's not like there is a rule. There are actually very few rules in Eurorack in general. Let's actually choose a shorter patch cable. So from my VCA output into my input of the carbon filter. And this filter is lovely because it has actually 4 different outputs. I'm going to use the 4-pole outputs, which is variable over here, and I'm gonna set it to low pass. I'm gonna go into my FX8. Let's bring this up again. Get some resonance. Let's also increase the tempo a little bit. Cool. You can also saturate it with this filter, which I love. Oh yes. How about we now use the second channel of ADSR to do stuff with this filter? Let's try and do that. I do want to take the tempo down for the LFOs, so let's do that. Let's actually get it way down. Let's make some sustain here. Okay, cool. This can work. So what are LFOs? LFOs are actually very similar to envelopes, but they are cyclical. In fact, I believe this particular ataxia module in its LFO channel is nothing but a looped envelope. So let's see what that means. So I'm gonna again go on the blue mode here on data, which is the second channel, and let's get the output of this channel here. And I want to have the channel 2 to LFO mode. Okay, now this is working as an LFO. And you see now it has some sort of triangular shape. It's quite interesting. You can get very slow with this. And let's try and use it again and use it to open the filter. So I have all the way open. If I close the filter, this will open it over time. This is very slow. There you go. It's quite cool for slow evolving motions and evolutions. Reverb. Spooky. Hello. I could use another VCA to decide how much of this LFO is controlling the frequency modulation of the carbon filter, but I actually don't have to, because I have one built in here in the ataxia and also one built in the carbon, so I can save on space. Very cool. Making it faster. Let's wavefold it and saturate it again. Let's go back to channel 1 for 1 second and let's dial it way more sustain so that it's always open. Now back to channel 2, which is in LFO mode. Again, let's change waveform. Now, the other thing that I want to show you is how you can use a mixer to mix multiple CV sources together and get complex modulations. Let's do that. Let's do this again with the filter maybe. I got my low pass out, bring the CV in back in, lower frequency, let's get something. Let's bring the tempo again slightly up. Right to channel 1. Okay, cool. So I'm going to use this LFO to open the filter again. But rather than sending it directly, well, I'm gonna get rid of it and put it into the first input of my mixer. Then I'm gonna go into my channel 3 of the variegate, and this is gonna send out stepped CV. This is what this is doing. You'll see that if I go on 3 and now go on note, I can actually select a bunch of different steps. And you see how this is all stepped modulation. I wonder if I could actually bring it on the red one, which I think you can see a little bit better on screen. So there you go. Now if I bring this into the channel 2 of my mixer, and then I get the output of my mixer, let's close this so that I can speak, and bring it into the red one. Now I don't have anything because I have all my first 2 channel of the mixer to 0, and again nothing. If I bring up the first one, I get my LFO from the channel 2 of Ataxia, and if I bring only the second one, I get my stepped source from the variegate 4+. And this is cool because it means that I can actually mix them together and have a cool hybrid of a LFO with a stepped sequence, and decide how much of each of them can go in, and I can get these really interesting modulation sources. So let's patch this into my FM out right away, and let's see what we get. Modulation is fun. I love it. The cool thing is that I actually get another channel from this mixer, and I can, for example, dynamically change the waveform with the same mix modulation. Let's see what we get. All of a sudden it gets very performable, and this is obviously the beauty of modulation. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you got something out of it, and that you realize how fun modular synthesis can be. And yeah, I'm just gonna play a bit longer, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, it really helps me. See you next time. Wow.